Hello and welcome to English for Philosophy Students. I am in a new place right now because my studio is not set up. And it's early morning. We have to take the grandchildren to music lessons in 45 minutes. Which means today will be kind of a short lesson, but I think a very good one. We are getting to the end of rule number 7 in Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. And rule number 7 is that you should choose meaning above expediency. And this is the 67th lesson in the book and the 20th lesson in Rule 7. This has been a very difficult rule, but I think it's been very good. And we're drawing to a close pretty soon. Probably not today, probably tomorrow or the next week, whenever we do the next lesson. So hold one sec while I close the door in case the grandchildren wake up and come in and say good morning, which we don't want. There. Hopefully we can be undisturbed for about 45 minutes. The children have also broken, I wanted to say destroyed, my timer. So I may have some trouble keeping track of time, but we'll do our best. Okay, we are beginning with the last section of the chapter, and it's called Meaning as the Highest Good. So I'm going to begin with reading. It was from this that I drew my fundamental moral conclusions. Okay, so we will have to look back to find out what this refers to. But I'll read on. Maybe we'll get it from the context. So, it was from this that I drew my fundamental moral conclusions. Aim up. Pay attention. Fix what you can fix. Don't be arrogant in your knowledge. Strive for humility, because totalitarian pride manifests itself in intolerance, oppression, torture, and death. Become aware of your own insufficiency, your cowardice, malevolence, resentment, and hatred. Consider the murderousness of your own spirit before you dare accuse others, and before you attempt to repair the fabric of the world. Maybe it's not the world that is at fault. Maybe it's you. You've failed to make the mark. You've missed the target. You've fallen short of the glory of God. You've sinned. And all of that is your contribution to the insufficiency and evil of the world. And above all, don't lie. Don't lie about anything, ever. Lying leads to hell. It was hold on. It was the great and small lies of the Nazi and communist states that produced the deaths of millions of people. Okay, let's go back and remember what he meant when he said it was from this that I drew my fundamental moral conclusions. So, last week, Jordan was talking about the question, what can I not doubt? So he was looking for a baseline fundamental, similar to I think, therefore I am. This is something that you can cling to and begin from. Well, last lesson, Jordan was looking for something like that, and he found the maxim, suffering is real. He found that was a baseline that he could build from. He knew that human suffering was real because of the horrors of the 20th century. Remember that? The horrors of the 20th century. Nazism, communism, Maoist communism, totalitarianism, gulags, concentration camps, starving whole populations. All of that happened, and it was real. And Jordan seized on that as the first truth or fact that he could cling to as undisputable reality. I believe that's what he means. And then we go on. Okay, suffering is real. The artful infliction of suffering is wrong. So this is a maxim. This is a pithy saying that you can remember as truth. Inflicting suffering is wrong. And this became the cornerstone of Jordan's belief. Okay? Understanding his own capacity to act like a Nazi prison guard, when he understood that he could be that, then he grasped what it meant to take the sins of the world onto oneself, which is what Jesus did when he saved the world. Each human being has an immense capacity for evil. Each human being understands a priori, perhaps not what is good, but what is not good. So it is self-evident, without any additional proof, that there is something called evil. And inflicting suffering on others is evil. And if there is something that is not good, then there is something that is good. If the worst sin is the torment of others, merely for the sake of the suffering produced, then the good is whatever is opposite. The good is whatever stops such things from happening. So he has found the meaning, or at least the beginning of the germ of the concept that he is looking for. The thing we choose, the thing we strive toward, the thing we reject everything else for. The good is whatever stops evil, or whatever stops needless human suffering. Okay, so moving on to today, it was from this, meaning it was from this realization that I drew my fundamental moral conclusions. Fundamental is baseline. Moral, what should we do? Conclusions. This is the end of my argument. This is the answer. And here are the answers, or here is the beginning of his advice. Aim up. So aim is like shoot your gun or set your goal. Set your goal high. Aim up. Pay attention. Have you ever heard the term mindfulness? Be mindful. Don't go through life as if you are asleep. Think about what is happening. Anyone who is watching this broadcast 70 lessons in is the kind of person who pays attention. That's good. Let's try another. We'll do yellow. Fix what you can fix. Don't be arrogant in your knowledge. Don't be arrogant in your knowledge. So you, all of you and I, we, people who think about these things, and we who think of ourselves as intellectuals, especially compared to all those other people out there, must be careful not to be arrogant and consider ourselves elite and better than the common masses. My favorite author is C.S. Lewis. In his books, he often has a simple man who is not well educated, not part of the intelligentsia, who has deep wisdom. Very, very deep wisdom. So we must realize there is wisdom outside of intellectual excellence. Avoid becoming arrogant. And closely related is strive for humility. The opposite of arrogance is humility. Strive for it. Strive means try to achieve it, seek it, pursue it. Pursue humility. It will not come naturally to you and me because of we fancy ourselves intellectuals. At least I do. And I mean, all of Olavo's students are sort of like intellectuals. Okay. Strive for humility because totalitarian pride manifests itself in intolerance, oppression, torture, and death. Okay, so let's look at that. Think with me. Who do you know in our day who is arrogant in their knowledge, who believe themselves to be elite, believe in their pride that they should control others and the world. Who do you know who is like that in our day? From my point of view, it's the left. It's anyone in government who thinks they know better how to run the life of ordinary citizens than the citizens themselves. It is those who are against freedom and in favor of big government control of everyone by a small elite. And it leads to, or it manifests itself. Manifest means we can see it by its intolerance, oppression, intolerance, oppression, torture, and death. This is it's a progression. The intolerance began, some years ago. Oppression is here now in America. We have not yet in America gotten to torture or death. But based on the history of the 20th century, it is coming. This is the roadmap that our nation, the United States, is on. For the road we are on. We've passed up intolerance. We're in the middle of oppression. Toward the beginning of oppression. Torture and death are in the future. Okay, so some more injunctions from Jordan Peterson. Injunction means he's telling us to do things. Here's another one. Become aware. Oops. Let's use this. Become aware of your own insufficiency. Okay. Forgive me, I just wanted to do this in green. Become aware of your own insufficiency. Insufficiency means you're not enough. You're not good enough. You're not big enough, strong enough, powerful enough. You are inadequate. Become aware of that. Maybe because this fosters humility. Okay. Become aware of your own insufficiency, your cowardice. So it's become aware of your cowardice. Become aware of your malevolence. Become aware of your resentment and hatred. So become aware goes with each thing. And because of the dash here, cowardice, malevolence, resentment, and hatred are actually expansions of the word insufficiency. We are insufficient because of our cowardice, malevolence, resentment, and hatred. Probably not an exhaustive list. Jordan Peterson is making a point that insufficiency is not just, well, I'm not as strong as the strongest man or as smart as the smartest man, but I'm pretty good. No. Insufficiency includes cowardice, malevolence, resentment, and hatred. Hatred is such a strong word that it is considered profane in our household. The children are not allowed to say the word. It's like it's a dirty word when you use that word to refer to your own feelings toward a family member or another human being. We do not allow our children to even say, I hate you, or I hate my brother, or I hate my neighbor. It's a very strong word. In America, the left uses the word hate to condemn conservative speech. All conservative speech is called hate speech, which makes it the most despicable, the most disgusting and unacceptable. It makes it the devil. We are justified, sort of, in hating the devil. And the left characterizes conservative speech as hate so that good people feel justified in hating the hate speech. Briefly, cowardice used to be one of the most embarrassing faults and failures of men. Not so much anymore. But it means being too afraid to defend what is right or to do what is right. Therefore, you do what is wrong because you are a coward. You are afraid in a way that is not justified. Malevolence is the desire to do evil, the desire to hurt. It is similar to sadism. Actually, the correct pronunciation of that word is sadism. But most people in the United States mispronounce it as sadism. Sadism. Resentment. Resentment is a petty, irritable grudge that manifests itself as small, mean actions. Nothing is too small if it hurts for a resentful person to do to you. Just like no kind action is too small for a loving person to do for you. Resentment is petty and evil, and it's petty anger. Consider the murderousness of your own spirit before you dare accuse others. So Jordan is making a strong point. He is saying that you and I are the problem. It's not the left only. It's all of us. And this is a Christian concept. This is the concept of original sin and universal condemnation. All have sinned and fallen short. It's very hard for me to believe. Can Isaac be a little more quiet, please? Okay. It's very hard for me to kind of believe that. I mean, it's much easier for me to believe that I'm a little less than perfect than that I'm like Hitler. But that is what Jordan is saying. We have within ourselves the potential to be Hitler under the right circumstances. And we must consider that before we set ourselves up to judge others harshly. And we must consider it before we attempt to repair the fabric of the world. Maybe it's not the world that's at fault. Maybe it's you. You've failed to make the mark. You've failed to make the mark. You've missed the target. You've fallen short of the glory of God. You've sinned. And all of that is your contribution to the insufficiency and evil of the world. Okay. All of those phrases. You've failed to make the mark. You've missed the target, fallen short of the glory of God, and sinned. All of these are synonyms for sin. Commonly used synonyms: falling short, missing the mark, etc. We're all sinners. Imagine if each of us had reached the full potential. Think of people who really changed the world. Gandhi, Olavo, Martin Luther King Jr., various of the great saints. What if each of us reached our full world-changing potential? Then it would be time for heaven to come to earth. But we haven't, and that is why it's not time yet for heaven to come to earth. We have all contributed and are continuing to contribute to that which holds back the coming of the Lord and Savior Jesus' second coming and establishment of the kingdom of God on earth. So then he goes to, above all, don't lie. Don't lie about anything ever. Lying leads to hell. It was the lies, big and small, of the Nazis. Hold on, I'm getting to it. Of the Nazi and communist states that produced the deaths of millions of people. Okay, so my impression, just to rag on the left again, if you look at the news, the network news, it's essentially all lies. It started out as small lies, kind of in the past. Lots of truth, small lies. But now it's lots of lies and almost no truth. So lies grow. No such thing as small lies. I also think about the name of the devil is, he is the father of lies. That is one of the deepest definitions of the devil, is that he is the father of lies. I also think about how interesting it is. You know, Jordan Peterson catapulted into fame and influence because he refused to lie. He refused to say that he would use the preferred pronouns of transgender persons under compulsion. The government was trying, well, the government of his school, the rules of his institution, were trying to force him to tell a deep-seated lie. When you use a false pronoun, you are saying that you agree and believe that that individual is actually the gender which they are not. And if you look at those dystopian novels like 1984 and Brave New World, you see that the end game of the totalitarian is to force the population to betray truth at the deepest level, and then they kill them. They try to force you to lie. We must refuse to lie. Even in small things, we must refuse to lie. That's what Jordan is saying here. Okay. We have not gotten very far, but I want to do one more paragraph and then, or one or two. So let's read a bit. Consider then that the alleviation of unnecessary pain and suffering is a good. Make that an axiom. To the best of my ability, I will act in a manner that leads to the alleviation of unnecessary pain and suffering. You have now placed at the pinnacle of your moral hierarchy a set of presuppositions and actions aimed at the betterment of being. Why? Because we know the alternative. The alternative was the 20th century. The alternative was so close to hell that the difference is not worth discussing. And the opposite of hell is heaven. To place the alleviation of unnecessary pain and suffering at the pinnacle of your hierarchy of value is to work to bring about the kingdom of God on earth. That's a state and a state of mind at the same time. Okay, so let's look at this. First of all, he is saying that we need to take into ourselves a rule, an axiom. The rule is, to the best of my ability, I will act in a manner that leads to the alleviation of unnecessary pain and suffering. It's like a vow. When I'm speaking to, I remember recently I was speaking to my grandson, Jackson, and he was upset about something. And because he was upset, he was pouting. He was going like this. So he was sitting around acting sad and resentful of something. Maybe he was told he was not allowed to do something that he wanted to do. And I said to him, I can't remember exactly how this went, but I think I said something to the effect of, I was telling him to stop pouting and to do something positive, and he was refusing. And I think I might have said something like, you suck right now. You suck. And he looked at me like, what? Because you're not allowed to say you suck. That is also profane in our household. However, I said, Jackson, you are sucking the joy out of the universe right now. Right now, you suck. And you don't want to suck. You want to put in joy to the universe. You want to add to the joy of the universe, not suck it out. You don't want to suck. You want to give and shine and contribute. So, let's do something positive. And he grabbed the idea and decided to clean up the house instead of sitting around angry that he wasn't allowed to do whatever he wanted to do. So the concept is, we're going to commit ourselves not to suck the joy out of the universe, but rather to put joy into the universe, to add to the joy of the universe. We're going to give. We are going to alleviate unnecessary pain and suffering to the best of our ability. This will be our axiom. This will be our vow. Now, if we do that, we have now placed at the pinnacle of our moral hierarchy a set of presuppositions and actions aimed at the betterment of being. So, if we take this vow, we are organizing our priorities and placing at the top of our moral hierarchy. Moral means what should I do, what I should do. Placing at the top of our moral hierarchy a whole set of actions and presuppositions. Actions, things we're going to do. Presuppositions are ideas and truths about what truly is better and what truly is worse. And all of this aimed at the betterment of being. The betterment of being. And why should we do this? According to Jordan, because the alternative is hell on earth. The alternative is the 20th century. And the opposite of hell is heaven. Therefore, we reason that if we take this presupposition into our heart and act on it, we are working for the establishment of heaven on earth, the kingdom of God on earth, which is a state, a future state, according to the Bible, when God and man dwell together on earth, the New Jerusalem, the end of the bad old days and the beginning of the good old days. It's also a state of mind for us right now. Now, last thing before I have to go. I do agree with this, but I don't completely. When I was in seminary, I was in a course called An Introduction to Biblical Ethics. This was in the 1980s. And moral relativism was in its heyday of what appeared to be positive growth. Now it's in its dotage of decrepit, foolish moral reasoning. I mean, you can't even call it moral to say that a child of 5 has a moral right to change their gender, and if a parent opposes it, they should be jailed. That's ridiculous. That is moral relativism gone insane and chaotic and crazy and destroying the world. But back in the 1980s, it looked pretty good. And the dominant value, which was at the pinnacle of the moral hierarchy in the relativistic schema, was love. So anything that was done allegedly because of love was considered the greatest moral good. And people were happy with that, comfortable with that. That was better than traditional Christian morality. Because traditional Christian morality might say a person has to have the death sentence for murder. And that's not loving. We can't have that. That offends our delicacy and makes our bleeding hearts bleed. Traditional Christian morality is mean and harsh. Love is a better idol to place on the throne. So even in that day, even in the beautiful youth of moral relativism, love as the moral pinnacle began to bear some bitter fruit. It began to be clear through the lens of moral relativism. It was more loving to let your daughter have an abortion than to make her bear the child she was carrying. It was more loving to forgive crime, especially if the criminal was underprivileged, than to strictly hold persons accountable for their actions, etc. So I myself, at an early age, around the age of 25, ensconced in my heart a moral absolute, something at the pinnacle of my moral hierarchy was relationship to God. I guess that's the best way I can put it. Relationship to God also implies a whole set of actions and presuppositions. My actions are going to be in line with traditional Christian morality. My presuppositions are those of traditional Christian theology. I prefer this to any demigod. So, for me, ensconcing this axiom that I will alleviate human suffering to the best of my ability isn't good enough to be the pinnacle of my moral hierarchy. For me, relationship to the God of the Bible is my pinnacle. So, it would be interesting to see what Jordan Peterson would say about that. I think he would probably agree. But I am out of time right now because we have to go to music lessons. We have to add to the joy of the universe by facilitating the nurture of 4 new musicians. So have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next week. How do I stop this now? I'm at a different place. Oh, yeah, here we go.